Revenge with Karen.
The moment the CTO asked how many stock options I held, I knew exactly how this story would end, just not how deliciously. We were sitting at some overpriced mountain lodge pretending to be visionary leaders while sipping cucumber water like it was rocket fuel. One by one, the CTO went down the row, asking each department head how many shares they had, like he was checking cattle tags before the slaughter. When it got to me, I didn't flinch. None, I said, never asked. Silence. You'd have thought I farted on the cheese board. The CTO, all smug in his startup casual $900 sneakers, cocked his head like he'd just found a bug in the salad. No equity, he said, then turned to the board chair like I wasn't even there. Dead weight, that's what he called me. The woman who built the dam system he brags about on stage. The code base they still use to this day, firewall architecture that saved our client list from a breach last year. But sure, let's pretend the woman without shares is just here taking up oxygen. The boardroom shifted. I could feel it, like someone cracked a window in a blizzard, sudden, invisible, but unmistakably cold. Nobody defended me, not legal, not ops. Not even the CFO, who once called me the engine under the hood. All looked down at their sparkling water and mini muffins like toddlers caught watching a dog puke. No one wanted to get involved, so I smiled, just faintly. The kind of smile that says, you really don't know what you just stepped in. And if you've made it this far, hit the like button and consider subscribing. 95% of listeners never do, but trust me, it helps our small team more than a 7-figure Series B helps a delusional CTO. This story, it's only just begun. After the meeting, no one said a word to me. Not even a good job, though I just walked them through a 4-year infrastructure map that made our competitor setup look like a Craigslist router. The CTO stayed behind with the board. I could hear muffled laughter through the glass door. I didn't need subtitles. I packed my laptop, walked back to my rental, and poured myself a cup of hotel room coffee sludge. Bitter, burnt, like dignity on discount. You don't need a severance package when you already know you're being ghosted in real time. That night, I lay in bed not thinking about stock options, but patents. Specifically, the 14 I had quietly written, submitted, and secured years ago under the name of a little Delaware LLC I'd formed when I was still a contractor. Back when no one paid attention to where the real code came from, as long as it worked. They didn't ask me to sign over the IP when they hired me full-time. Rookie mistake. The kind that costs companies millions. But hey, who cares about paperwork when you're too busy posing for fast company features and posting teamwork makes the dream work on LinkedIn? I did ask once, about equity, about formalizing ownership over the modules I created. My old boss said it wasn't the right time. I'd be taken care of when we hit our growth goals. Then she left for crypto startup and I got a new desk next to the copy machine. So no, I didn't ask again. Because when someone keeps moving the goalpost, eventually you stop kicking the ball. But the thing is, while they were busy measuring value in restricted stock units and linked in buzzwords, I was building something they didn't even know they'd sold. The bones of the product, the engine under the hood. I didn't just build it, I kept the receipts. And they were about to find out that when you call the architect dead weight, she might just let the house fall. Quietly, legally, permanently. 3 days after the stock options inquisition, I got the email. Subject line, team realignment. Please meet with HR, capitalized just like that, like someone tried to make the word realignment sound like a yoga class instead of a corporate execution. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Everyone knows what that kind of email means. You don't get looped into HR for team realignment unless someone already sharpened the axe. Still, I showed up, business casual, hair up, no mascara, just clean lines and quiet fury. I was the kind of calm that makes other people uncomfortable. They sat me in the small conference room, the one with the fake ficus tree and chairs that feel like punishment. Across from me sat the HR director, Nancy, poor thing, clutching a clipboard like it might shield her from the emotional shrapnel she was about to deliver. Next to her was a guy I didn't recognize. Security. He didn't introduce himself, just hovered like a Bluetooth shadow. Nancy started with pleasantries, which made it worse. Emily, thank you so much for coming in on short notice. First, we want to recognize your incredible contributions. Save it, I said. Just get to the part where I'm being walked out. She blinked, paused, then jumped straight to the canned phrases. Due to recent market shifts and strategic restructuring, we've made the difficult decision to sunset several legacy roles. Sunset, like I'm a goddamn screensaver. She slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside, a printed letter with the usual jargon, effective immediately, termination without cause, non-compete reminder, return of assets. No severance, no benefits continuation. Just a bulleted list of what to expect, like I'd ordered a grief sampler platter. I read the letter once, folded it neatly, put it back. Okay, I said. Nancy looked startled. Okay? Yeah, okay, I stood. I'll grab my jacket and badge. She half stood like she wanted to say more, but the security guy was already twitching toward the hallway, like it was his time to shine. I walked with him in silence through the office I helped build, literally. I picked the layout for the dev bullpen. I designed the server room's airflow. I fought to keep the quiet rooms during the last budget cut. Every door we passed had a fingerprint of mine on it, and no one looked up. Not the junior devs I'd mentored. Not the data analyst I helped get promoted last year. Not even the CFO, whose forecasting tool I single-handedly rewrote during that Q2 crisis. Eyes on screens. Noise-canceling headphones. Emotional silence on full blast. At my desk, I packed light. Just a few personal items, my coffee mug with the Rogue Bitflipper logo, a faded sticky note that said kill the latency, not the vibe, and a USB drive I didn't need but took out of spite. My badge beeped one last time at the exit. Then nothing. No farewell email, no goodbye drinks, just digital erasure. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't send some long-winded email to the team about how much I'd miss working with such passionate people. I'm not that kind of martyr. And besides, I didn't miss them. I missed the work, the code, the logic, the part of me that got to be sharp, precise, unbothered by ego. As for my replacement, I heard about her the next day. Some flashy product manager with a disruptive leadership bio and more emojis in her LinkedIn tagline than a Gen Z group chat. She once gave a talk called Scaling Empathy While Growing ROI. I wish I were making that up. Word around the Slack channels was she came from a growth hacking background and was obsessed with building personal brands. She also apparently thought code reviews were oppressive. Fantastic. They didn't replace me with a better engineer. They replaced me with a mirror. Someone shiny. Someone who would nod enthusiastically in strategy meetings while outsourcing the hard stuff to a contractor and calling it innovation. But here's the thing. You can replace a name on the org chart. You can swap in new leadership. You can even delete someone's Slack account before they've hit the parking lot. What you can't do, rewrite history or the code base, especially when someone still holds the pen. The Monday after my exit, I walked into a quiet coworking space 2 blocks from my apartment. Not the flashy kind with cold brew on tap and neon slogans about hustle culture. This one had creaky floors, no playlist, and coffee that tasted like someone ground up Resolve and poured hot water over it. My kind of place. I took a corner desk under a flickering fluorescent light and opened an old laptop, one I hadn't touched since I stopped freelancing. Booted up slower than a government website, but when the desktop appeared, there it was. A folder titled WKH Docs, Walsh Kernel Holdings, my old Delaware LLC. I'd set it up back in the early days, when I was just another contractor writing low-level modules for companies too cheap to hire full-time engineers. Back then, I'd read somewhere that you should always register your IP through an entity, not your personal name. Liability reasons, ownership reasons, reasons that seemed paranoid until they weren't. 14 patents sat inside that folder. 14 fully registered, USPTO-approved patents authored by yours truly. Compression protocols, signal prioritization trees, kernel-side memory scrubbing. Elegant, boring things that made enterprise software feel fast and safe without anyone knowing why. I clicked through each one slowly, like flipping through photos of a life they never valued. Were all still mine. You see, when I joined Valorix full-time, they never had me reassign those patents. I checked, twice. I wasn't sure at first. Memory plays tricks on you when you've been gaslit for 5 years, but the paperwork was clean. The filings were under Walsh Kernel IP Holdings, and the license they'd used was limited to the consulting phase. No renewals, no perpetual rights. Just a quiet oversight buried under years of assumption. If there's one thing corporations love more than innovation, it's assumption. I logged into the Delaware Business Portal, renewed my LLC in less than 10 minutes. Walsh Kernel IP Holdings was alive again, legally and operationally. Then I made some coffee, cracked my knuckles, and began the paperwork to transfer every single one of those patents into a new IP licensing shell, this time with very strict sublicensing clauses. One-way doors only. Valorix had built their cathedral on my blueprints, but from now on, they'd need a ticket just to enter the foyer. The next move was simple: reach out to the competition. I wasn't petty, just practical. Valorix had spent the last 3 years pretending I didn't exist, but their rivals, they'd been watching from the sidelines, drooling every time my name came up in an engineering white paper or a tech blog about silent geniuses behind enterprise stacks. I sent 2 emails, short, clinical, just a subject line: licensing opportunity, proprietary kernel stack IP. Both companies replied within the hour. The first one, Monolith Systems, set up a meeting before I could finish my sandwich. The second, Edge Vantage, was a little more cautious, but intrigued, especially when I dropped a hint that Valorix's license had expired pending non-renewal. I wasn't bluffing. I didn't need to. Ever watch a chess game where one side thinks they've got you cornered, only to realize you've been sacrificing pawns to trap their queen? That was me. Except the board was Valorix's product stack, and I'd just taken back the pieces they thought were theirs. I wasn't doing this for vengeance, not yet. This was reclamation. Strategic, measured, and quiet. Let them think I walked away with nothing. Let them believe the narrative they fed the team, that I was phased out, not aligned with vision, better suited for individual contributor roles. Meanwhile, I was rewriting the terms of engagement, line by line, clause by clause. While they refreshed LinkedIn looking for their next miracle hire, I was setting the stage to make their entire stack legally radioactive, and I didn't need to storm the castle to do it. I already owned the moat. It started with a whisper, not a threat, not a headline, just a quiet message from an old friend. Ellie, one of the few still left at Valorix who hadn't drunk the Kool-Aid, pinged me from an encrypted Proton account. No greeting, no fluff. Just a subject line: you might want to see this. Inside was a screenshot of an internal Slack message from a compliance officer named Sasha. Someone I barely remembered, but apparently someone sharp enough to notice a hairline crack in the wall. Message read: can someone confirm if the Walsh kernel 7.1 modules are still covered under our licensing terms? I can't find a valid extension in the archive. Last reference ends Q3 FY21. Below it, dead silence. No replies, no emojis, just digital tumbleweeds. I stared at that message for a long time, not because it surprised me, but because I could feel the tremor before the quake. Someone inside was starting to ask the right questions. A day later, a second whisper came, this time from outside. Valorix's biggest client, a logistics platform worth more than the rest of their customer base combined, sent back a red-lined renewal contract with a comment that made me snort into my coffee. Please confirm that all core modules remain covered under active IP licensing. We cannot proceed without assurance of ongoing patent compliance. They knew, or at least suspected. And if their legal team was sniffing around Walsh kernel references, then the dominoes were already teetering. Because here's what most people forget: code is traceable. Every build, every module, every naming convention, especially the ones with my initials baked into the string like a signature. Walsh kernel 7.1 wasn't some black box you could swap out like a light bulb. It was marrow. Pull it, and the whole skeleton collapses. Now compliance was asking the fatal question: do we still own what we're selling? You know what happens when legal and sales both start to sweat in the same week? Panic. I could picture the CTO pacing around his glass office, probably yelling at interns to check the Git logs or call legal again. Bet he'd just gotten off some panel interview bragging about radical transparency and was now neck-deep in opaque licensing documents written before he even joined. And he wouldn't find what he was looking for, because it was never there. I watched it unfold like a slow-motion detonation. First, a recruiter reached out to me on behalf of an interested party asking if I was open to consulting work. Urgent, strategic, NDA required. I declined. Politely, but I knew exactly which bridge was on fire. Then Ellie sent another message, a screenshot of the CTO's calendar. Blocked out in red, IP escalation urgent. You know what they say: when the lawyers enter the chat, the party's over. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet. I didn't tweet, I didn't post, I didn't send anonymous tips to tech blogs. I just waited, watched, sipped coffee while the storm built behind tinted office windows. There was a strange kind of satisfaction in it, not joy, not triumph. Just this cool, grim stillness that settles over you when the consequences start catching up to the people who thought they'd never have to face them. Like watching someone realize the parachute they packed in a rush has a hole the size of their ego. And yet, I wasn't done. This wasn't the moment to gloat or take a victory lap. That would come later. For now, it was time to fan the flame. Not burn it all down, not yet. Just warm the air enough for every exec, engineer, and product manager at Valorix to feel it in their bones. The future they were selling had a ghost in the machine, and that ghost's name was still printed on every line of code they couldn't replace. It broke on a Sunday, which felt poetic. That quiet, sacred time when tech people pretend to touch grass, but secretly scroll GitHub on their phones while pretending to love brunch. A tweet came from a mid-level software analyst named Devlin Park, some self-made sleuth with a knack for license sleuthing, and a cult following of nerds who read EULA like bedtime stories. His tweet was simple, weird. Just noticed that every major enterprise product using network stack integrations now includes a new line in their license, licensed under Emily Walsh IP Holdings. Anyone know what that's about? Under it, a screenshot from a security appliance UI. There it was, plain as day. Bottom corner, just above the export log button, licensed under Emily Walsh IP Holdings. All rights reserved. 14 words that landed like a grenade. The replies came fast, some confused, some amused, a few pretending to know me personally. I interned with her back in 08. Total legend. No, you didn't, Brent. Most of them were tech people doing what tech people do best. Overanalyze, speculate, and try to reverse engineer the drama. Within an hour, someone found a filing linking my LLC to the patents behind Walsh kernel 7.1 through 8.0. A second thread popped up cataloging which enterprise vendors had recently updated their license footers. A third started a meme chain with my name over Neo's face, captioned "I am the stack." Wasn't scandal. It was curiosity, the kind that makes boardrooms nervous, because nothing rattles venture capital more than a name they don't control quietly showing up in all the contracts they never read. By noon, #Emily Walsh was trending in the corner of tech Twitter, nestled between GPT-7 rumors and AWS outage. Most of the tweets didn't even tag me directly. They just asked who I was and how I'd pulled it off. Story hadn't fully crystallized yet, but the shape was there. Then the CTO jumped in, because of course he did. He quote-tweeted Devlin's original post with the kind of smug sarcasm that people mistake for damage control. Can't own the future if you're stuck in the past. 11 words that screamed panic wrapped in faux chill. The kind of thing you post when your Slack channels are on fire and legal just told you to remain consistent in public communications. I stared at that tweet for a minute. Not angry, not even irritated, just entertained. Then I opened my laptop, logged into my account for the first time in weeks, typed one word, licensed. That was it. No thread, no link, no hashtags, just a digital shrug from someone who didn't need to explain herself. Within minutes, my mentions exploded. Blue-check engineers, tech reporters, even a few investors sliding into my DMs like I was some kind of forbidden algorithm whisperer. The energy wasn't scandal, it was respect. A quiet, holy SHT from people who realized the person they'd overlooked was the one holding the blueprint. I didn't post again. Didn't need to. The timeline handled the rest. People started comparing timestamps, my exit, the patent transfers, the updated EULA. Few analysts even drew up rough revenue estimates of what licensing might be generating if it applied to every active deployment using Walsh kernel derivatives. The numbers weren't exact, but they were close enough to make someone at Valorix lose sleep. Back in my coworking corner, I sat with a hot mug and watched the digital dust swirl. It was like standing at the edge of a canyon and hearing your echo finally return, sharp, clear, undeniable. This wasn't revenge. Not yet. This was recognition, vindication, and the most delicious part, it wasn't loud. It was legal. It was footnoted, buried in the part of the product no one ever reads until suddenly it's all they see. The emergency board meeting was held on a Tuesday at 7:00 a.m., the universal hour of corporate panic. Not that I was invited, of course, just heard about it the way you hear about every good disaster, through a series of increasingly frantic messages forwarded from someone who shouldn't be forwarding them. Illy, bless him, sent me a screenshot of the calendar invite. Subject line, IP exposure and licensing escalation urgent. The location was boardroom / Zoom fallback. That fallback wasn't for convenience. It was for containment. You don't want witnesses when a C-suite starts turning on itself. They brought in outside counsel this time, someone from a white shoe firm who bills in panic minutes, not hours. Legal didn't sugarcoat it either. No corporate spin. No middle manager tap dance. None of the Emily Walsh patents were properly assigned during her employment term, the lawyer said. They were filed under her LLC prior to conversion and never contractually reassigned. You have no enforceable claim to the IP. Silence. I wasn't there, but I could feel it through the transcript Illy leaked. Every pause, every controlled breath, every mouse click as someone double-checked the documents hoping for a typo that would save their careers. The CTO, predictably, refused to believe it. There's no way, he snapped. She built those modules for us. She was on salary. Yes, legal replied, but the modules in question predate her W-2 status. And without a separate IP reassignment clause, usage past the original consulting window constitutes an unlicensed deployment. In other words, they'd been pirating their own product. The VP of sales chimed in next, and this part. This was the line that made me actually laugh out loud in my coworking nook. We've lost 3 renewal deals in the last 48 hours, all of them citing IP exposure. One of them is asking us to indemnify them. This is radioactive. CFO started asking about insurance coverage. The answer was what you'd expect. Depends on the definitions of misrepresentation and material risk during contract negotiations. Translation? Good luck. Meanwhile, their shiny new head of product, the one with the emojis and the growth hacker text bio, was apparently asking if they could just swap out the stack. Bless her heart. That's not how enterprise software works. Can't rip out the spine and expect the body to keep walking. You can't duct tape open source replacements onto a proprietary architecture without someone noticing. And you definitely can't rebuild in a week while sales hemorrhages clients and legal drafts letters that start with "to whom it may concern." We are investigating, back in my chair. I took a deep sip of coffee and stared at the weathered patent binders I kept next to my desk. 14 little acts of foresight. 14 reminders that while they were giving keynotes and raising capital, I was reading the fine print, still and steady. The storm was no longer mine to navigate. I'd passed that baton with surgical precision. Now it was theirs to carry, along with the late-night calls, the internal whisper campaigns, and the desperate attempts to redact public tweets from licensing analysts. I didn't post, didn't gloat, even respond to the influx of back-channel emails now pouring into my inbox. People offering sympathy. We always respected your work. You deserved better. We didn't know. Too late. They never asked. Now they could talk to my legal team or not. I wasn't chasing apologies, settlements, or LinkedIn endorsements. I wasn't chasing anything. I already had what I came for, my name in the footer, my clauses in the contracts, my patents tucked safely behind a firewall no CTO could code around. Let them scramble. Let them patch and posture and spin whatever version of events made them feel less exposed. Because I wasn't in that boardroom anymore. I was the board. The Monolith Systems rep arrived exactly on time. No assistant, no entourage. Just a manila folder, a black Moleskine notebook, the kind of unshakable calm you only see in people who know they're about to win something. We met at a neutral spot, a quiet private room at a hotel tucked behind a museum, the kind of place where business gets done without ever being noticed. No branding, no bad jazz, just linen napkins and soundproof walls. I liked it instantly. His name was Marcus Chen, Director of Strategic Partnerships. He skipped the preamble, no slides. No icebreakers, just a handshake, a sip of water, and then, we'd like to license your patents. All 14, preferably long-term with an option to renew on exclusive terms. I nodded. What else? He smiled faintly. We don't just want your stack, we want your mind. Advisory position. You help us future-proof the architecture. In return, you get a board seat, equity, and first right of refusal on any internal patents derived from your modules. I didn't answer right away, just looked out the window at the skyline. Funny how small things feel once you've walked away from them. What's your position on sublicensing? I asked. Marcus tilted his head. We keep tight control. Why? I turned back to him. My voice was calm, steady, surgical. One condition, you may not sublicense anything to Valorix, past or present. No indirect deployment, no backdoor licensing through partners, no carve-outs. If they so much as touch a single module in the future, you're in breach. He didn't blink, just reached into the folder, pulled out a contract, and wrote it in by hand. Deal signed, just like that. I'd expected some resistance, some bureaucratic red tape or half-hearted negotiation dance. But Monolith didn't care about Valorix's reputation. They cared about velocity, exclusivity, crushing their biggest rival with a legally bulletproof nuke disguised as a licensing agreement. And me, I cared about precision, about control, about never again sitting in a boardroom where someone raised their eyebrows at my value because they didn't see a line item next to my name. This was not revenge. It was rebirth, a reclamation of voice and value and the kind of long-term leverage that didn't evaporate with reorgs or quarterly shakeups. At Valorix, I was a resource. At Monolith, I was an asset, and more importantly, I was theirs, not theirs to lose. Back at my office, I stared at the signed agreement for a long time, not because I doubted it, but because I wanted to remember the exact moment the tide turned. The moment I became the quiet architect of Valorix's expiration date. Monolith had no plans to rub it in. They didn't need to. They were too smart for that. While Valorix scrambled to rewrite its product stack with duct tape and desperation, Monolith would silently absorb the clients they left behind, one compliance clause at a time. And my role? To make sure the transition was smooth, silent, surgical. People think the climax of a story like this is some explosive confrontation, a boardroom brawl, a screaming match. The hero standing triumphant, while the villain weeps into their shredded quarterly report. That's not how it works. Sometimes the real climax happens in whispers, in initials scrawled on a clause, in a smile exchanged across a contract table, in the quiet line that turns a company into a ghost. This license excludes any use by Valorix, Inc., its affiliates or partners. I'd walked into that meeting as a woman they once labeled dead weight. I walked out as the architect of their erasure. And the best part, the game had only just begun. Meltdown didn't come with a bang. It came with audit logs. Some poor engineer at Valorix, probably 6 espressos deep and 2 weeks into a code refactoring sprint, had run a dependency trace to prep for a security audit. What they found was a quiet horror story. Over 70% of the product still relied on Walsh kernel modules. Hard-coded, buried in middleware, repackaged but never replaced. The logs didn't lie. You can rename a function, skin a dashboard, even spin up a new UI layer to fool the sales team. But when it comes to back-end architecture, the truth lives in the trace. And my name was all over it. That's when the leaks started. First, a redacted PDF of the audit report made its way onto a dev forum. Critical exposure identified. IP ownership unclear / potential infringement. Every engineer worth their salt knew what that meant. Can't ship product when you can't prove you own what's under the hood. Then came the customer fallout. 3 mid-sized enterprise clients sent formal notices suspending renewals, citing legal ambiguity regarding stack licensing. A larger account, a federal contractor, no less, issued a breach of contract warning, demanding indemnity for any potential IP liability. It was brutal, clinical, the kind of language that doesn't scream but slices. Valorix tried to save face. They posted a generic press release about exciting new architectural shifts and a bold roadmap into 2026. But anyone who's worked in tech knows what that really means. We're scrambling, and legal won't let us say why. Then the resignation came. The CTO, the same man who once called me dead weight in front of the board, resigned to pursue new opportunities in the innovation space. The announcement included a filtered headshot and a paragraph so devoid of sincerity, it might as well have been generated by a nervous chatbot. Internal morale cratered. He sent me a screen grab of an all-hands queue and where someone asked, anonymously, is the company still legally allowed to sell the current product? The reply, we're evaluating all options with external counsel. Translation, we don't know what we still own. The piece de resistance came from a leaked internal memo sent to senior leadership. Dated, signed, and very real. Failure to verify the intellectual property chain of custody prior to product launch has resulted in client loss and potential legal exposure. Estimated financial impact from Q1-Q2, $88.3 million. That number hit the bloodstream fast. It showed up on tech gossip blogs, analyst emails, investor Slack channels. Valorix's valuation, once inflated like a parade balloon, began to deflate with visible wobble. No pop, just slow, embarrassing descent. And me? I didn't gloat, didn't tweet, didn't leak, didn't even return the passive-aggressive message the Valorix board sent through a third party interested in opening a dialogue. What would I say? Sorry you didn't read the fine print. Maybe next time don't build your castle on a foundation someone else owns. No, I said nothing. Because justice, when it's designed well, doesn't need narration. It doesn't need a loud moment. It just needs to work. And this was working. What they didn't realize, what they never realized, was that I hadn't built Walsh Kernel to be pretty. I built it to be permanent, to be vital, to be the invisible scaffolding holding their golden product upright. And now, without it, we're discovering just how hollow their empire really was. They thought they fired an engineer. What they actually did was pull the spine from their own body and watch it collapse, vertebrae by vertebrae, under the weight of their arrogance. Cold clarity, no fireworks, just inevitability dressed in silence. It was subtle at first, barely visible. A single line of text tucked at the bottom of a dozen different dashboards. But it spread like a watermark, showing up in update logs, service agreements, user license overviews. Licensed under Emily Walsh IP Holdings. Some placed it in size 8 font, right next to cookie disclaimers. Others had it nestled in there about pop-ups. But it was there, and the people who knew what it meant, they saw it like a brand. It meant the game had changed. In 2 weeks, the licensing rollout had gone global. Monolith Systems, Edge Vantage, Raven Secure, half a dozen other competitors had locked in agreements. I'd structured each license the same: no sublicensing, no derivative obfuscation, and absolute audit transparency. If anyone tried to launder my IP through back channels, they'd be found, and they'd pay. There was no wiggle room, no loophole. Valorix's name was never spoken aloud in the negotiations. It didn't have to be. The clause was always present. License excludes deployment by Valorix, Inc., its affiliates directly or indirectly. That sentence became my signature. My signature became their sentence. Somewhere in the flurry of attention, a business magazine, mid-tier, nothing flashy, reached out for feature. I almost declined. But then I saw the pitch, the woman who owned the stack. I agreed, gave them an hour off camera. Just me and a journalist who actually did their homework. No fluff. No how did it feel to be underestimated? Nonsense. Just sharp questions, sharp answers. The article came out the following Monday. My photo on the cover was understated. No blazer, no arms-crossed power pose. Just me, sitting on a bar stool in jeans and a black tee, smirking like someone who already read the ending. Inside, the story laid it bare. The consulting years, the LLC filings, the quiet patent play, the strategic licensing. No slander. No disgruntled employee angle. Just one undeniable truth. They could have had me, and they let me walk. The email from the Valorix board landed 2 days later. Subject, we'd like to speak. No details, no apology, no recognition of the wildfire they'd caused. Just 7 words from the same people who sat silent while I was escorted out of the building like I was a janitor who'd stolen staplers. I didn't respond, didn't archive it, didn't reply. I deleted it. I opened my portfolio site. Just a clean landing page with licensing request forms, white papers, and testimonials from clients who now slept soundly knowing their architecture wasn't a legal minefield. I added one new section. Just 2 lines. Coming Q1 Kernel 8.0, exclusive to limited partners. No details, no specs, no promo campaign. Just a promise, you thought that was my best. You haven't seen anything yet. That was the new normal, the new altitude. I wasn't a ghost in the machine anymore. I was the machine, the source, the unshakable baseline, and they would never again get to rewrite me out of my own legacy. No lawsuits, no speeches, no revenge show for the boardroom crowd. Just a quiet, relentless truth stamped into the footer of every tool they needed to function, licensed under Emily Walsh IP Holdings. The woman they erased now owned the ink. The silence they mistook for surrender was, in fact, the terms of their surrender. Permanent, binding, irrevocable, just like me. Big thanks, you legends of the old office days. Subscribe to keep the switch-flicking chaos alive. Your ex-boss is shaking in their loafers.